What is going on, guys? Duranathor here, and today I am bringing you a deck profile of the Melodious Invoked deck that I've been playing. Melodious like to fusion summon a lot, and Magical Meltdown is just a really bonkers card when it comes to fusing, so I've tried them together. This is kind of what I've settled on. I think maybe I can still change it, maybe I can still kind of optimize it a little bit more, because I'm sitting at 43, and I think I can definitely get it down to 40. But this is what I've settled on for the moment. We are playing 3 of the Refrain, because you have to play 3 of this. It's bonkers, it's mad. Normal summon, or special summoned, you can add a Melodious monster from your deck to your hand. And then in the Pendulum Zone, you can Foolish Burial a Melodious card from your deck by targeting a fusion, fusion Melodious that you control. I'm playing 2 Couplet. I was playing 3, and I felt like 3 was a bit too much, because you don't want to see it in your opening hand, but you don't mind if you see it in your opening hand. If you're playing it at 1, you just don't want to see it in your opening hand at all, but you can get away with playing it at 2, because you can pendulum it to search for Concerto, which may or may not bait out an Ash, depending on what your opponent is playing. And then you've still got the other one to be able to search with the Refrain to get the special summon effect, so I think 2 is a good point to settle on. I am playing 3 of the Soprano. I feel like I could probably cut this down to 2. I was playing First Movement solo, and if you saw First Movement and a Soprano, then you were pretty much like all in for your absolute mega combo, but First Movement was just interrupting the Invoke stuff too much. There was a lot of times where I'd see First Movement and Alistair, be like, right, cool, I've got to make the decision of which card I want in my hand to just be dead. And that really hurt the consistency. So I may cut the Soprano down to 2 because I've taken out the First Movement solos, but having it at 3 and seeing it in your starting hand still isn't that much of a worry, because it's not the ideal normal summon. If you're going to be normal summoning, you want it to be either Refrain or Alistair, but if you've got Ostinato, you can 2 to make Bark to summon any Melodious, normal summon the Soprano, make a Dwell. So you don't mind seeing it, but I might cut it down to 2, we'll see how it goes. 3 Sonata, because it's not once per turn. Special summoning itself isn't once per turn. So if you can just recycle it and just keep special summoning it, it's just a free resource. I've never thought of cutting this down to 2. I think 3 is the way to go with it. You've got one of Chopina. She's, basically mandatory for the combo. She does counteract with Alistair as well, but if you don't see Alistair in your opening hand, you can go for the combo using Chopina. If you do see Alistair in your opening hand, then you can do the combo without Chopina. The Ostinato being the main thing. You can send, say, like 2 Refrains, summon the 3rd Refrain, search a Couplet, Refrain then searches, adds itself, and then that allows you to go into the Pendulum side of the deck instead of the Fusion, so you end up on Appaloosa rather than Etwell. But you can still use her, and being able to go down that line is a lot better because you end up with more on board. So having the one-off Chopina hasn't interrupted things as much as having 3 First Movement solo did. I even tried First Movement solo at 2, and I was still seeing it a lot with Alistair in my hand, and kind of just being like, okay, I'm playing one-off Cannon, because Baguska. If you can end up with a couple level 4s on your board, and you haven't locked yourself, because I'm not playing First Movement solo, and you haven't played the Composer to lock yourself in, then you can make a Baguska in defense mode alongside your Bark, and then your activated fusion monster, activated effects of your Melodious fusion monsters can't be negated by the Baguska, but you're still negating your opponent's stuff. I'm playing Aria and Elegy. Aria's, I feel like really mandatory for it because you can't be targeted. Something I found that I really enjoyed is to First Movement solo out an Aria, and then normal summon a Refrain, because your opponent can't Imperm or Veiler it. They have to Ash or Ogre, and if they Ash it, you've already got the second Melodious on board to go into Bloom Harmonist, which is why I did like having the First Movement solo, but I feel like I just hit it and Alistair way too often. But I am playing Aria and Elegy. There was 2 games where I set up the lock with both of them, and my opponent was just like, I can't do anything, so they just scooped. Just pretty much like a free instant win. 3 Ostinato. If you play less than 3, I don't know what's wrong with you in the nicest way possible. Why would you ever play less than 3 of this card? It's not once per turn, and it sends from deck. It's your, like, you know, you want to see this in your starting hand, you want to open with this, you play 3. You always play 3. 1-off Concerto, sorry. I am thinking of maybe putting it up to 2, but I don't know how much that hits the consistency, because you can fusion summon a fairy fusion monster. Mechaba's a fusion, not a fairy, sorry. Argades is a fairy. So you can potentially still summon an Argades, because it's Alistair the Evoker and a fusion monster. So if you've got the Concerto, and, you know, like, if they imperm your Bark, you can Concerto, Alistair, and Bark, Argades, then you get Bark effect. So, and if you really wanted to, Elysium's also a fairy. I'll go into the extra deck in a moment, but it gives you the option of Argades and Elysium from Concerto as well, so maybe at 2. But then the typical Invocation package, 3 Alistair, 3 Meltdown, a Terraforming, 2 Invocation. I kind of feel like if I was putting Concerto up to 2, I'd put Invocation down to 1. And Invocation's just that little bit better, because if you do end up having to go like a really weird route, because you can use the Alistair effect on your Melodious Fusion cards. So if you've got Invocation in hand, and you wanted to, like, actually no, you can just use it from hand, can't you? If there was this kind of like weird line that you had to go down, you can use Invocation better than you can use Concerto. And Concerto's once per turn, so I don't know. I don't know what I prefer. I'm thinking 2 Invocation, 1 Concerto at the moment. But yeah, Magical Meltdown's just like, I didn't want to do that. Really good. A lot of the time, like, your opponent will see Magical Meltdown and go, oh, okay, I'm going to Ash the Alistair. You then drop an Ostinato. I haven't had anyone do it yet, but I know that they will. If someone, like, panic ashes the Ostinato, it just wastes their Ash, because Meltdown says it can't be negated. And also, when you summon the Bark, your opponent can't respond, because it's an on-summon effect. So you just get the summon from your deck for free, because your opponent just cannot Ash, Imperm, Veiler, Ogre, anything. They cannot respond when you fusion summon. Magical Meltdown's such a good card. For the hand traps, we're playing 3 Ash, 3 Veiler, 2 Herald. I don't know where to sit with Herald. Love the card. Love it in this deck. But because I'm playing the invoked stuff, I don't know how much I love it. But then even when playing pure Melodious, I'm like, I don't feel like you need to play any more fairies than what you're playing already. So, 2 Herald, so you see it some of the time, but not all the time. Maybe I'll bump it up to 3. I love Herald as a card. I love Herald as a card. I was playing Nibiru, and it was just getting in the way of everything way too much. Like Couplé, you have to control no or only Melodious monsters. Ostinato, you have to control Melodious monsters. Like, it is a light, so you can use it with Alistair, but if you're using Alistair first, and then using the token and Alistair to make a Mechaba, you're then not Ostinato. And you're also not normal summoning your refrain. Nibiru just got in the way a bit too much. Playing 3 Imperm, you know, I feel like this is just typical Ash Veiler Imperm as hand traps. There's a lot of Tenpai at our locals at the moment because it's a new deck. And for some strange reason there was like a few Sword Soul as well. Maybe because Protoss is back. But just being able to Imperm or Veiler the monsters that summon the token just kind of stops their turn, so it's nice in that sense. We are playing 3 Small World. The lines in this deck are really good, really good. Herald or any Melodious just gets you another Melodious or Alistair, because you send the Melodious Veiler. If you really need to, and you have Veiler and Small World, you can Small World to send the Veiler and Alistair, and then you can add Refrain or Soprano. Or Aria, but I don't think you'll ever be adding Aria and Cannon. Like you will be adding Refrain or Soprano. So the Small World line does work really well. Or like at worst case, you can always add a Herald, but then kind of takes away the surprise factor. Small World, I feel like, just really works in this deck. I've been enjoying Small World as a card recently. When it first came out, I just really didn't like it, but now I'm kind of like putting it into every deck that I possibly can. And one-off call by, because if you can stop your opponent's Ash, you can just combo for free. Going into the extra deck, we are only playing one of the Atwell, because you've got the options of going either the Pendulum or the Fusion route, and I kind of feel like if you're summoning a second Atwell, how have you not already won the game? What point did it get to where your opponent dealt with your Atwell, and you had chance to summon another one? 2 Buck. I think you kind of always have to play 2 Buck. It's like the facilitator, it does everything. I love these new fusion cards. I really do. But sticking with the old, Schuberta absolutely clutched up against a Labyrinth player. Just I banished Welcome, Big Welcome, and Stovey. And I had the Atwell on board with Schuberta and Apollosa. This was like turn 4. We actually had like a really long game. I ended up doing like quite a big combo, because Alistair kind of helps you to get into the Apollosa with 4 material rather than just the 2 through the Exceed the Pendulum. But yeah, I had Atwell, Schuberta, and Apollosa, and they just had to deal with too much, and because I banished all the traps, there wasn't too much they could do. I like Schuberta, but my favourite has got to be Diva. There hasn't been a game where she has just flat out won it for me yet, but there will be. I know that there will be. Diva's just really good. Really underrated as well, I think. Going into the links, we have the Artemis. Artemis is purely here because you normal Alistair, search Invocation, make it into Artemis, make Mechaba. That's all she's used for. Done. Harmonist is there as a backup. You pretty much will be summoning Aria and Elegy from the Harmonist. 99% of the time. You may go Soprano and Elegy to get one back from the graveyard, but 99% of the time you will be going for Aria and Elegy to just set up that lock. Exit the Pendulum lets you go into, just say, like a free Apollosa. So the combo line that you go down is you Ostinato, send 2 Refrain, summon Bark, Bark effect, summon the 3rd Refrain, Refrain search Couplet, Couplet summon one of the Refrains from grave, so that's your 3. 3 of them into Exit the Pendulum, Bark activates, you summon one of the 3rd Refrain from your grave, Exit the Pendulum activates, putting one of these back into your hand, you scale the Refrain and the Couplet that you searched earlier, and then you've got 1 Refrain and an Exit the Pendulum to make a 2 Apollosa. So it's only 2 negates, but it's just a free Apollosa. And then you, before you make the Apollosa, the Exceed and everything, you would have searched for Concerto. So you end up with Apollosa and Schuberta from just Ostinato. I think there is a way that you can get the Schuberta on board and having used Concerto before you go into the Exceed the Pendulum, so when you send the Bark, you also get the Concerto draw, but I haven't played with it enough to figure that out. With another Melodious in hand, you just send the Couplet and the other Melodious in hand to get the Concerto in your graveyard, but I think there's a way of being able to do it with just the Refrains and Couplets. But as I say, it gets you into an Apollosa. I've already gone over Babushka, Just a really good level 4 that doesn't really affect this deck too much because of Buck. To touch on Buck and Etwell effects, while I think. While you control this fusion summon card, the activated effects of your Melodious fusion monsters can't be negated. Pretty good. Pair that with Magical Meltdown. Pretty good. If you special summon it, you summon one from deck. If Bark is sent to the grave, you special summon one from grave in defense position. Most of the time you will be summoning Shopina, because Shopina isn't a hard once per turn. Shopina, you'll be adding Soprano, because Soprano isn't a hard once per turn. Etwell, the Labyrinth player that I was playing against had to read this like 4 or 5 times, and I was just amazed at kind of how bonkers this is. So, like, when you activate Etwell, you just say, I'm activating this. Like, that's the cost. You don't have to tell your opponent how many you're banishing until the end phase and how many they're putting back to the hand. You just say, I'm activating Etwell. Do you have a response? And then, if Etwell leaves the board because of an opponent's card, you can special summon a Melodious from your deck or extra deck. So at worst case, if it does get Kaiju'd, you've still got a special summon to bring something out. Most of the time, you'll probably be going for a Buck, because then if Buck leaves the field, you just get the Etwell back. Fun. The Invoked, I've already touched on it slightly. Mechaba, typical Invoked card. Negate depending on what you've got in your hand. I know I'm only playing 3 Imperm as the traps, and you never really want to be discarding an Imperm to stop your opponent, so it's mainly monsters and spells. You can guarantee you get the monster back in your hand because of the invocation affecting graveyard, but a monster negate can sometimes save you. Argades, pop something when it's special summoned, and then when your opponent special summons something, you pop something. You can banish a fusion monster from your graveyard for it to gain attack. You can banish a Buck. This is a 4/5. Pretty good. And Elysium. So you have to use an invoked monster and a monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. So I haven't actually summoned this yet, so I am thinking of dropping it, playing something else. Maybe a Bloom Prima, just for the like double attack to go for game. But if you end up with an Elysium on board, it kind of just really, really forces your opponent's hand. I haven't ended up with one yet, but I'm sure that I will. I will go over the side deck for the reasons that I'm playing them, but the side deck is pretty much always down to your locals. I'm playing the one-off Score, because sometimes catching your opponent off guard and making their attack 0 is great. Don't really want it in the main deck because there aren't too many matchups that it helps with, but she has come up. The third Herald is in the side. Most of the time I do end up putting it in, which is why I'm thinking of just maybe playing 3 in the main, but I'll experiment a little bit and see what happens. But the third Herald in the side. Sphere Mode, I feel like Sphere Mode or Lava Golem, there's quite a few decks that just set up a lot of monsters at the moment, and just being able to Sphere Mode your opponent and just get rid of all their problems is very, very handy. Droplet has won me many a game. I think it's something you play in the side, I don't think you main it, but Droplet is just incredible for games 2 and 3. Harpies and Lightning Storm, as mentioned, there is a couple of Labyrinth players, which is why Evenly's in there as well. But these 6 are just your generic, like, I know I'm going second, so I'll put these in. And there's the one-off Gozen. It does come up. Attribute especially, I feel like Attribute hits temp high a little bit. But once again, I've never really sided this in, so I might drop it for something else. The typical thing that I end up doing if I'm going second is to just take out the entire Alistair package and 1 Soprano, and then put in 3 Sphere Modes, the Evenlys, the Lightning Storm, and a Feather Duster, and then like a little bit matchup dependent, sometimes I'll take out the Aria and Elegy, because if I know I'm going second, I don't really want to be setting up the lock, I want to be interrupting my opponent to put in Score and the Herald. I always personally feel it's handy to know what you're going to be siding out before you're even playing the game. Like if you go, like for this for instance, you go, okay, I know for, you know, like game 2, if I'm going second, I will just take out the entire invocation package. So you know that you've got 9 because of terraforming technically, that you will be siding out. You could always keep the meltdowns and the terraforming in, because as I said, it does affect the ostinato, so you can take out the Alistairs and the Invocation, so that gives you 5 slots, and you could put in, say, like 2 Lightning Storm, 3 evenly matched. But I kind of feel like if you're doing that, you might as well just go all in, take out the entire engine. So that is everything for the deck profile. If there is anything that I've missed, please feel free to drop it in the comments. If there's a card that you guys are playing, and you're sort of thinking to yourself, like, are you mad you don't have this in your main deck? Why are you not playing it? The only one that springs to mind is possibly Tam Tam. But Tam Tam is a time card, and I find that she's really bad in your typical plays. Like, yes, she extends a load more, but when I've been testing her, I've kind of just ended up with the Tam Tam and the Fusion substitute, just kind of be like, okay, this, yeah, I've got them, great, but I've already made a 12, and I've already made Schuberta, like, apart from an extra buck. But most of the time you then don't have another one in hand, you only have, say, like, Tam Tam, and you don't want to use Schuberta or Etwell as the fusions. I just haven't found Tam Tam to work. Maybe I'll play her as a one-off in the side for time, but that's the only thing I can think of. But as I said, if there's anything you can think of, please feel free to drop it in the comments. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.